Hey, welcome back to the Speak to Freedom podcast. I'm your host, Anthony Trucks. Today's guest is Robert Glazer, and he's all about this idea of core values. His book he's going to be talking about is called The Compass Within. And what's great about this book is it actually allows you to understand what drives you, like what makes you you, but more so not just what makes you you, but what makes you you in a way that benefits the world. And also understanding when you have a clear idea of what that is, and what your values are, and how you're in alignment, maybe how you're out of alignment, how some simple tweaks and shifts can allow you to get into a space where you can actually show up as the best you and also have an amazing skill of leadership and connection and have a great life. If you're a person that wants to share a message with the world, it's going to help you connect to what are your core values that you may not even know where they came from. I found out on this actual podcast where mine have come from. But when you understand what those are, you'll be able to show up in a different way with your message, with your heart, and as a speaker or just as a regular human that's going to allow you to be able to make the most of every single day. That for me is a great gift, to know how I'm functioning around my relationships, my team, but also how I show up in the world to be who I am integrally and congruently. Because when you figure that piece out, it actually becomes easier and smoother to live a beautiful life and make amazing impact. So without further ado, let's hop into the episode with Robert Glazer talking about his book, The Compass Within. Hey, we're here. Welcome to the Speak to Freedom podcast. I'm excited to be our guest here to you today, Mr. Robert Glazer. Robert, how are you doing, my friend?
Anthony, I'm good. How are you?
I'm great, man. I actually got my walk in. Not all of my walk. Usually I got longer to walk, but I had to go to the chiropractor because I hurt my neck lifting weights this morning. But I think I'm good again.
That was a quick availability by them. So.
Dude, yeah. It's called the joint, and then you just kind of drop in. And so we just go and drop in. And so I had pretty much from 10 o'clock straight through to like, I think 3 o'clock today I'm on. I was like, if I'm gonna get down there, I gotta do it now. So I went down and went to like Whole Foods with my wife. And then we went from there to the chiropractor while I started my coaching call at 10, got home. Anyways, rocking and rolling, man. Excited to chat with you today. We're gonna unpack part of your life and your story, but also this book you've written, The Compass Within, which I like the concept of it. And then as the audience kind of hears it, my goal is for them to realize how important it is for them, but also to realize the person behind the scenes who wrote it, and also the weight of it, which is you. So here's how I always start my podcast. It's going to be a question that may be interesting, but be as braggadocious as possible. Say I'm walking around town. I sit down next to this guy. It's you. And I turn to you and I start talking and you start talking to me. But you in a moment go like, I got to tell you something. In your head, you're going to tell me something amazing. My head, I'm going, who is this dude? So I want you to share with me, if you're talking, why should I listen to you? Like, what makes you special? It sounds crazy to say it like this, but I want you to be like the braggadocious, like, I'm good at this and this and this. But tell me why, because as a listener, I want to know, who is this guy and why should I listen to this individual?
Yeah. So look, there's a lot of different camps out there. And I think this will resonate with you given your background, right? Particularly in kind of management and leadership. So there's a whole bunch of academics and thought leaders and some people that put some great stuff out there. And they've never managed a company for a day in his life. And then there's a whole bunch of entrepreneurs out there that are really talented, but they don't know they're really just good at what they do. And they don't know how to structure it or explain it to anyone or kind of teach it to anyone else. I've sort of crossed those worlds. I've started 5 different businesses, largest of which is a 300-person global marketing agency, was voted number 2 CEO by Glassdoor, and built a company that won 30 Best Places to Work awards. Awesome. Also, this will be my 8th book. So I like playing in this between things that actually work, ideas and structures that I've seen work in the real world and that help people grow both inside and outside their organizations.
I like that, man. So you're coming from a place of experience and knowledge. I've always told people you shouldn't be teaching how to run the race until you've crossed the finish line.
Yeah. So Adam Grant's funny. He talks about how like there were some of the really good divers were bad diving instructors because they were so good that they just be like, hey, you just do the backwards thing. And he's like, you needed someone who could kind of break it down. But I'm with you. Like there are a lot of coaches out there, and and some of them were in the business world, and some of them were just terrible at actually doing it. And I understand you could be a good coach, but I like people that have done it. So
I agree.
you probably don't want someone coaching you on football that's, never
Didn't play
played
football.
along Pop Warner level.
Yeah. You know what's wild though? When I played with the Pittsburgh Steelers at the time, one of the offensive line coaches had never played football. And it's funny because you talk to the O-line and they're like, yeah, you could tell he doesn't. He knows football, but like you could tell he has to do things that didn't make sense. He's like, they'd be like, coach, I can't be in two places at once. But you're right. And I think there is a space where some people, like, this is what I would say I did. I have gone the route of getting good at things, but then I codified it. I wanted to know why this worked and how this, I wanted to know why it happened because I was aware of that people would say, well, oftentimes a great athlete can't coach athletes very well. And a person who's doing something phenomenally well is not always the best teacher because they know how to do it for them, but not how they got there, especially if it seemed like it was easier. So
if they have a ton of talent, it's hard to coach other people sometimes, right? Their talent is just much better.
Just go faster. Yeah. What do you mean? I was fast. Just go faster. Like I was going fast. You're right. So I used to train athletes. And that was the hard part. I was a fast guy. I had to start learning like, why was I fast? My biomechanics, my strength. What could I do? Oh, you can't do that. Okay. Patience. So I get what you're saying, which I like that idea. Cause then for you to be in a position where it's your 8th book and you've had this great success, you've likely codified it because you duplicated it. Other people can't. Some people can be good at one thing, but to duplicate is an interesting piece. And so I want to unpack more of this idea of the compass within because it matters for us to figure out, one, what that is, but two, like, how did it come to be? Of all the things you've done, what was the basis behind writing this book? Like, what are the values and principles that were like the core of you that goes, hey, I got to get this out into the world?
So 3 years ago, I was speaking at an event and someone read my bio and I realized that every single thing on that bio came after 2013, which I hadn't totally internalized anymore. In 2013, I went to a leadership event as I was building my company. It was a global leadership retreat. And I thought it was going to be a lot of tactile things we were going to learn. And the first 2 days were kind of a big mirror in your face. Like, who are you and what do you value? And how do you make that the basis of your leadership in your organization? And I came to realize I was really values oriented, but like most people, I couldn't articulate what they were. And so there's a difference between getting electrocuted by the fence and saying that hurts and saying, oh, like there's the electric fence, right? And I think for a lot of us, crossing our values is when we get into trouble. And it's better to not be electrocuted. So I left that retreat. I spent 6 months figuring out my own values. I built a process that I was confident enough in that I went back and taught it to people in our organization in our leadership training. We saw great results. I wrote this book called Elevate. In it, I talked about building your spiritual capacity and understanding what you value as an individual. And everyone's like, yeah, like, how do I do that? And I was like, well, I don't have something I can send you. I did this thing and I'm teaching this curriculum. And so I ended up turning it all into a course. The curriculum, after 100 people took it and I realized it worked, I had a couple thousand people take the course. People were like, look, this really works. And then I was like, how do I get this to more people? So that was, I need to write a book, but I need to write a book that people will want to read. And I had a vision of like walking through a Barnes and Nobles and there's this book like on values or core values and no one would pick it up. So I needed a different angle, which led me to the parable.
Okay. Which parable is that? You just dropping nuggets. You know, you want to talk about this parable. What's the parable you want to talk about?
Well, the parable is, the story is a parable. So it's it shows it in the story form and then it explains it to you in the end. So if you read Patrick Lencioni or the Goal Giver or anything like Bob Berg, like the book is actually of a story of a character who's wrestling with his values across his work, his relationship, and his community.
So it's almost like I don't know if it's the right example, but like The Alchemist is kind of built in a way like that. Would that be conceptually?
Yeah.
Okay, that makes sense. I like that. I obviously, just so you guys know, I have not read the book myself. I've got a chance to briefly skim some of the information about it, but I like doing it like this because I get to hear from the author, like the core of it, which allows you guys, the listeners, to hear the exact same thing. So we understand what goes on. You have this situation going on, but the idea is this: if I'm gauging right, the book's got to be, if the compass within is the piece, it's going to be more of you, the centered you. And I've always heard the statement that goes, you can't grow a business more than you've grown yourself, which I believe happens to be the realm of personal development, personal growth. Does a book kind of dive into some of that aspect?
Yeah. So the book kind of measures this character as he goes through the big three, which is your community, your partner, and primarily he's going through some issues with his job and his vocation. And really, when you get down to figuring out how these things align for you, comes down to really understanding what it is that you value. What do you value most? And that should be your ultimate decision-making rubric in terms of, thinking about your partner and your job and your community. Because if you do something that's fundamentally out of alignment, it's just not going to feel very good.
True. Are there any that are congruent ones? Like, cause I'm thinking about maybe somebody values, I don't know, my daughter does her fingernails. Like she values her fingernails not getting broke when she does barbell lifts, right? Sounds crazy to say it that way. But are there some critical values you think that should be in place for like people that want to be leaders or people that want to step out and do better in life? Like there's always going to be a bunch of them. Are there some core ones you know of?
Yeah, my experience is that these are not aspirational. For most people, they tend to look back at their early years, their formative years, like stuff in their family, and they are decidedly doubling down on something that was important to them or running away, from something. So, your daughter may have a value of like, if you look good, you feel good, right? Or if you feel, or something like that. But these aren't aspirations. These aren't things we want to be. When you figure this stuff out as a 20, 30, or 40-year-old, you can actually, and the character in the book has a little bit of the epiphanous moment, you can look back with almost like a stencil and be like, oh, that's why I hated that job. That's why that relationship didn't work out. That's why I like that, because this was the right fit and this was the wrong fit.
That's a good one. I do know that I've always been a person that, maybe not always been, I think around my 30s, I got this idea of life is an amazing classroom if you're willing to learn. And the interesting thing is life gives you tests, but you don't fail, you can't pass a test. You'll fail tests if you skip class, right? So it's like I show up to life and I let things happen. But if I don't pay attention to life, if I don't notice these things, I'm doomed to repeat the same process, which is why I think people, they end up dating the same person who's not a good person all the time, but it's a different person's name, right? It's a different, obviously human, but the same person keeps coming to life. Same jobs, same issues show up. So it's interesting to say it like that. Do you believe that's tied to maybe invisible core values that no one's unpacked? Or is it some way that we should be reshaping the values we have underneath to be able to change our lives?
No, here's the thing. A lot of people's passion lies right next to their pain. So you had something that, let's say a kid grew up with a single parent and that parent worked, 3 jobs and was able to get them into Harvard. And then they went on to form this award-winning after-school program, right? The fact that their parent kicked their butt for them and did everything didn't change the fact that they were lonely. And then that kid who was lonely as a kid decided they were going to develop a program that kept other kids less lonely. So this is why I think you go back to understand. You don't go back to adjudicate or to blame or to otherwise. But you kind of know it's a value when you can connect it. I mean, I was talking to someone last week, and I can do this with you. One of the true tests of a value is the opposite of something. It's usually the opposite of something that really bothers you to your core. And he was like, I can't stand, and people, their language, and they, when people aren't credible and they show up, and in 2 minutes, we basically realized that like he had a parent, he didn't say which one it was. I'm going to guess it was his dad, who made a lot of statements about things and kind of bullied people. And as he got older, he realized they weren't true. Right. And so now as an adult, it is very important for him that people are credible and that they listen. And that's sort of like, that is a acumen he's developed. So again, if I did the same to you, I'd say like, what is something about people or person that drives you, or behavior that drives you crazy, that makes you like pull your hair out?
Oh man, you know what it is? So you're saying this, I'm understanding what it is. I hate when people, they don't stop at stop signs when they're driving around town, they just blow through them. There's like a social contract that we have in place. And I hate when people break it. I don't like when people throw stuff out of their car windows. I was at In-N-Out sitting at the table one time in California. And across like there's like table, parking space, street, parking spaces.
Yeah.
And I'm with my family. I watched this person throw their garbage out of the window. And I didn't tell my family what I was doing.
Yeah.
I got up and this was like maybe a year ago. I got up and walked over to their car, picked it up, knocked on the window and handed it back to them. And they were like, look at us, a crazy person. I go, garbage cans over there if you want to go put it in there. Like there's a principle thing to me. And so
let me ask you, I want to dig on that, the why. So is it about the disrespect angle of it? Like what is it about it's the wrong thing to do? There are a couple potential routes there. Yeah.
First off, it's wrong. It's wrong. And you don't realize, here's the thing, someone has to pick that up.
Yeah.
Like that's what I think about. Someone has to do this thing. And so you are so selfish and so out of integrity that you will do that knowing without caring. So for me, it's like this, I say social contract. There are certain things that we have society to function how we do well. We all agree to do and to not do. And when you break that contract with the awareness as an adult that someone's have to deal with it, I want to spit in your face, not spit in your face genuinely, but it pisses me off pretty bad.
By the way, no, that is the exact reaction that it normally has. People are like, I want to strangle the person. If I create an opposite one, if I do the reverse, if we figure out their value and then I create an opposite avatar, they're like, I want to strangle that person, like, or that action, so there's something in that for you around like there's some value around the social contract or the community or doing the right thing. And if we spent more time on that, I'm pretty sure it's something that you had in your life that was very important to you, that a parent sort of really instilled in you, or it's something that you didn't have and so therefore it became important.
Yeah, for sure didn't have it. We grew up as the functional family that was dysfunctional. So I'm for sure didn't have it. And in my life, I have run from as many of those things that I grew up with that weren't in place. Like eating at the dinner table as a family. We didn't do it growing up. We were growing up. We had a house that was just filthy. We grew up poor, didn't have very much, just garbage strewn about. So I think it's more of the like that connection of that part goes, oh, it's icky, and I don't want to be that anymore. So it is the antithesis of it. That's interesting. Yeah.
These things, like I said, these things are deep and they impact our relationships. They impact how we show up. Right? Yeah. You would struggle with a partner who did that. Right. That would almost be a fireable offense more than if you had a partner that just didn't, because look, you probably, you feel like these are some basic rules and decency that we all need to have.
Yeah. And that's how I bring my kids up. And so my wife's the same way as me. I mean, maybe not as angry about it, but she understands that's how we function. But I get
and your kids know that like they can do a lot of things, but if they ever did that, like that is red line.
It's fun. We've had situations. We have a rule in our family. Like if we're out about, I don't make you pick up strangers' garbage, but if you kick it, you touch it, you're picking it up. So, and I hold this rule even if I am not with my kids. Just last week, I was walking and I wasn't paying attention. I kicked like this tray. It was heading into the DVC track where my wife does track. And I was walking in, I had some on my fan and I kicked it. And I knew in the moment, like no one saw, but I know, like I knew. So I went back and picked up this dirty tray and threw it in the garbage, but at least I can go to sleep.
Right, because you would feel out of integrity if you didn't do that. Yeah.
So that must be what you're talking about. It's a core value of mine that it sounds like.
That is a core value. And we could play around with the wording. And the way the wording is just to make the action you be able to access it. And then when you have the wording, you're able to be like, yes, I want to do more like this. Or there's something in that about, there's a few different roots of community or right way or do your part or take care of other people. And maybe you felt like, no one took care of your stuff. And so that's like, I don't know, like something like that.
Interesting. So if we have this, so I have that, you have these values as well. How do these become beneficial to the person who wants to be a leader or grow their company or better their life? Like if the values are in set, can they be adjusted? Can you ingrain new ones? Like what does that look like?
Yes and no. You're most likely not going to change them. So, and actually this is the purpose in pain. Like there's a lot of good. So, but the thing is, I think that every strength overused is a weakness. And I think that you show up with this in a leadership role, whether you realize it or not, and your ability to know that and articulate that, right? So if you're yelling and screaming at people on their team when they do something that's rude and disrespectful or seems to like kind of whatever the equivalent of trash is, like they left the folders for someone else to clean up or whatever, you really as a leader want to be like, when your team came, like, look guys, like guys, girls, using that generally, like I am someone who believes that like you pick up the trash, you do the thing you're not asked to do when you're not looking, and you do the thing that's better for the collective. And like that is really important to me on my team. And when that gets violated, you're going to see me unhappy, right? So you're just like declaring what your playbook is as a leader. By the way, we just learned it's your playbook as a parent, and I'm guessing it's your playbook as a friend. Friends who won't pick up their weight or just assume that you'll just figure
not racking the weight.
Right. Pull your weight. I don't know. There's something on it. If I had to get the name, it's like pull your weight, or it's it's up to you totally or something. Yeah.
And this is interesting because my brand as a leader. So if everybody here who's listening is a leader in some way, even if you don't think you are, but we're leading. But I've always like my brand's dark work. The work in the dark that lets you win in the light, but it's also tied to the idea of what you do in the dark comes to the light. So for me, I function clean in the dark so that when I come to the light, there's nothing that's going to be, another shoe's not going to drop. This is Anthony in front or behind, which makes it easy because that's a value of mine, integrity and honesty and doing the right thing. I don't know why, but
right.
that makes
But the
sense.
problem is integrity, as I said, it doesn't work as a value because your definition of integrity is that one definition below her. A lot of people say it's tell the truth, and you're like, be the same person in all aspects of your life, right? Or there's a definition of that, or be what you see. And maybe it is really like the dark and the light. It's like do what you say and say what you do, right? Or something
100%.
that specifically.
100%.
So this is my example of the fence, right? If you figure this out, you will look around your life and you will see you have fences and highway lanes, electric fences and highway lanes, and you will have found your way into all of this stuff, even if you couldn't put the vernacular on it. But if you can put the vernacular on it and see it, it becomes more of even, you can kind of cook with gas on that.
I like that. So what are your values? What are the things that get you all disturbed inside?
So my first one is find a better way and share it. Self-reliance is one that's very deeply me. Respectful authenticity and long-term orientation. So on self-reliance, like for an example, just a little one, like people that are super dependent and entitled and don't try to do anything themselves, like just gets me like in knots. I even have a joke with because that overlaps a little bit with what yours is around doing what you can or something like that, or being the same person. But I even have a joke with my daughter and my wife where I always say, like, you guys are like great looking, but terrible lookers. Like when they can't find something after 30 seconds, they will ask for my help with it. And I'm like, I don't understand. You lost it. If you really can't find it after an hour, like I'll help you, but why are you asking me before you look for it yourself? Right. So that's like an example of self-reliance. I will drive myself home from the hospital if they will let me, because I'm like, why would you drive yourself home if you can? Like, that's just sort of my viewpoint on things.
Yeah, I get it. I like that. What was the other one? There was one more that stood out to me. You had three other ones. What was the second one?
Find a better way and share it, which is literally what I'm doing today.
Why? Why is that a core one? It's interesting to me is most people, their desire, like they'll find a better way, but it's not to share it. It's like, I'm gonna figure it out and move on.
Well, that's what I had to realize. Like, if you think about the books I've written are almost all something I figured out that I thought could make people or organizations better. So I'm much more interested in the open source nature of it. And people will be like, you told me this 3 times, like I repeat myself because I don't know. There's just something about, wanting to share it and tweaking. And my mom would tell you to this day, every time she told me to clean my room, I'd go rearrange my entire room. Like I'm just, I'm a tinker optimizer.
Yeah, I like that. I get that. That's probably a useful thing.
But my wife knows this. And sometimes she'll be like, look, we've got these plans this weekend and please don't make them better. Like I'm good. Like we're good. I'm good. I'm not looking for feedback. Like, let's just run with it.
Yeah. That's awesome that she knows that and can communicate that with you in a certain way without freaking out when it happens. That's a good marriage right there. I like that. There's more telling in that than probably most people realize.
Look, she has a right way orientation, and whether things are right or wrong, and people like that cannot change their mind unless they come to it on their own. But sometimes there's just no right choice, and that ends up as paralyzed indecision. And I'm like, look, just pick pizza or Chinese food. Like, it's not going to matter.
Yeah,
like,
I get it. I get it. I totally get that. That's like a common guy thing with women and their food choices. What constitutes, because I have mine and you have yours. What constitutes, at least for leaders, what are good core values that people should have? Or like, but what are some components people should be paying attention to?
Yeah, so I'll give you the rubric because I don't think there's any good or bad value. I think it's just true for you. But there's a 4-point test that I call the core validator. So I have these 6 questions that you start by answering. They're all at Robert. We can talk through some of them, but at robertglazer.com/6 because people always struggle to write them down. And I'm like, here they are.
The number 6 or letters?
Word 6, SIX. Yeah.
Word 6. Gotcha.
So you answer these questions and it helps you look at a whole bunch of patterns and themes. And then you kind of run them through this filter, which is first, the theme is, can you use it to make a decision, past or present? Because I think that's the most important thing on a value. Could I if yours was like, am I doing and saying the same thing? Like you could very much look at a decision and know if it meets that. Yeah. The second thing, which we walked through, was when you imagine the opposite, does it strike a nerve? It should be like, yes, I really dislike that.
Okay.
And then as you try to figure out the right phrase, is it a phrase rather than a word? Because it's so hard for a word to have unique meaning. Like I said, family means 10 different things. Integrity you said integrity, and then you said a deeper meaning that I think is what you mean of integrity, which is like, do what you do in the dark, you do in the light, right? Like that's a much more specific thing. And then the last thing is, could you objectively rate yourself on it? Like, could you say like, I'm doing a good job at this or I'm not? Because that's the ultimate kind of metric.
Okay. That's good. That's what I'm good. I didn't even think of to consider, but that's actually an awesome way to look at those things. And then it means obviously someone would
That's why integrity doesn't work.
Yeah, by itself.
You could say I'm doing a good job at being the same person in the dark and the light, right? You could look at that
person be robbing people on the subway, right?
Right, exactly.
Doesn't mean you're doing the right thing. That's actually a really good concept to think about. So when I look at this book, who's it mostly written for, right? Because it sounds like it'd be for everybody, but when you were thinking about writing this, like who was in your head as you were going through developing it?
It's more than anything I've written. I think it is for everyone. I think it's finding its place in a lot of people maybe in their early 20s that are kind of trying to figure out what is their path. But similarly kind of 40, 50 too, like in terms of like, maybe I've sold a business, maybe I'm trying to figure out what's next. I feel a little lost. Like what is most important to me? Because I can promise you the career, vocation, or whatever that you're doing that is aligned to your values. You know, if you were training people how to be the same person, you know, in all aspects of your life, like that would be serving at least one of your, you know, values. So I think it really helps them think about that. And particularly people are thinking about their relationships and the next phases and their friendships. And that's where that clarity helps.
Okay. So the idea is we have values, they function and operate. I mean, most people, I'm assuming, would know when they're in flow, right? You're dialed in, like I'm in flow.
I always
now,
say that. You know in flow, and you know when it all feels painful.
Yeah, right? It doesn't say that. Do you know when it feels painful? Because as I'm listening to you, I like to analyze my own life and go, where did that fit for me? And I know for sure that there was times like when I was dialed in, football-wise, doing it, but then I got divorced at a point with my ex-wife, who's now my current wife again. We got remarried. But they're definitely what I call the dark times, man. Like I was in a fog, and I was for sure, as I think back to it, I wasn't in line with my values and my integrity. And that was the catalyst to get back on track. It wasn't easy, but like now I'm so thankful that I did. But also I come from a place of, I guess you talk about, like I share it as a coach and a speaker all my life that put me in this position here. So how does somebody like sit back and maybe analyze and know, man, I'm not in alignment with these values, but even more so, if they're out of alignment, how do they get back in?
Well, the answers are kind of not a self-serving answer because people ask me that a lot. How do I get in alignment? I'm like, you can't get in alignment until you get clarity. So whether you read this book or figure out how to do this work, if you can get clarity, then you can do a scan on your life and say, oh, and some people, maybe it's not even you need a new job. Maybe some people it is, but maybe it's like, oh, I really realize like I am someone who loves to build consensus. I've got to change my job, or I got to ask to go do customer research, you know, or do things that align to that. I don't want to do this type of work. I want to do that type of work. So all of those things on how you do that, like come after you have this sort of clarity epiphany where you're like, oh, and look, we all have some in-law in some way, shape, or form that violates our values. And even if you're like,
very true,
even if you're like, oh, I get it now. And I'm just not, this is the problem. And I'm not going to give that my energy. Like I now see why that person drives me crazy. Right.
Mm-hmm. That's interesting. I would probably echo that heavily right now.
Every time I make that joke at a speech, I'm like, you're all thinking about at least one person with the word in-law, and everyone like laughs awkwardly. Like, you know.
Yeah, well, because the truth, and it's one of those things where it's the family you bring in, but it's not always a family that dials in. Even your own immediate family can be funky, but it's I know what you mean. But it's interesting to have that perspective. Now, obviously, those relationships, and while it's the same kind of relationship, we have these relationships at work. How do you navigate this with people at work? Like, because I can't choose the people to have and not have around me. But then also my assumption would be that if we get people dialed in and say, book gets picked up by a manager, right? How can they utilize this to help their company grow or their team grow in some way?
I think, they can figure out for themselves and be authentic and straightforward with their team about who they are and communicate. Like I've had leaders like, hey, like trust is really the most important thing to me. And so if you're feeling a little distance, then we probably lost trust, and please come have a conversation, you know, with me. So, and then I've had teams do this work together and they use it to communicate with each other. So one of my favorite stories I heard, which is kind of a value story, and it brings the whole thing together, was there's a soccer player for the women's team. I forget which one, but she and her partner were married, and they had these deep fights over dinner because one grew up in a household where there was like tons of brothers and stuff. And if you didn't grab your food on the table, like you had nothing to eat. Like it was like a kind of Hunger Games. And the other grew up in a family that just like for different financial things always like was like, you do not waste. And so they were having huge arguments because it was actually a core value thing where she would want to order tons of food for dinner and she would be like, that is wasteful. And so what they did was they talked about it. They realized this, like one's value was there's always enough and the other's was you don't waste. Like that's going to be a problem. So at dinner, they said, look, you can order whatever you want. I think maybe it was Abby Wambach but we are going to eat leftovers like the next 2 days. And that's basically how they chose to reconcile that.
That's it. That's a good one though. That's a good reconciliation and compromise. It makes sense. I grew up in that family of 6 too. Like you better get your food or someone's going to eat your food. Right. My wife is the one doesn't waste. She will literally put into like Tupperware a single bite of a hamburger. Like, bro, eat the hamburger. What are we doing? But it was really,
look, those were deep childhood stuff about why that was important to them. You might have a value of like, get yours first, right? Because
and I eat everything on the plate.
Yeah.
Everything on the plate. And I also am like, don't touch my food. Like if it's on my plate, I don't do family sharing. Her family's Filipino. They don't waste anything. And everybody can touch everybody's food. And I'm like, don't come over to my corner of the table.
Maybe this conversation will help you with a new food structure in your family. You're proving my point. Like it's amazing how some of these surface issues just have really deep connections for us.
But then if you figure it out, you learn. So my wife and I, we talk about it, but it allows us to have navigational discussion, like the 2 soccer players, it sounds like. You find, I don't even know if compromise is the right word, but you find out how to appease both, which I guess is kind of compromise. But
you
then
find
we get
solutions, creative solutions.
Yeah, exactly.
But here's the thing, and this goes to relationships. I always say we all have one of these that are a little, but imagine an opposite magnet. So imagine you're in a relationship. It doesn't matter if you both play sports and like chess and whatever, and you're a live for the moment and they're a save for tomorrow and they're a this, and like that's just gonna be really, really hard if every day you have to manage around the core things. And so that's why I think like it really helps understand like the relationship piece of it and where it's going to be problematic and not.
That makes sense. There's a lot of good stuff in this book, man. I think this is going to be great for people to pick up and figure out. I may just pick it up and grab it and roll through it, because I think for me, I always like to find ways to codify my life differently, but also to see it. When I give a certain frame to it and I can understand things differently, it makes it easier.
I'm with you on frameworks. I everything for me, like I love 2x2 matrix. Like show it to me in a way that I can understand it.
Exactly, and then I can change and that's one thing I think for me I've learned over the years is I am a malleable person. Like I know how to move and adjust without feeling like I lost myself or carrying resentment for having made a change.
Yeah.
So one thing that works in my marriage, like maybe it's one of my core values, is I put the marriage above me. Like there's my wife, there's myself, and then there's the marriage. And the marriage may require from me something I'm not happy to give, but if it serves the greater good, which will benefit me, I'm gonna do that. And so like there's compromises I'll make.
I think those are 2 of your values that kind of go together, right? It sounds like you grew up with a lot of like people not looking for each other and loneliness. So this community and taking care of each other, like these are all really important, things to you. Yeah.
Yeah, very much so. I grew up in foster care. So like the family unit wasn't a dynamic that I was experiencing properly for a lot of years. So that's definitely a core underlying thing for me. I was in the system for 11 years. And so
I didn't realize that, but that explains a lot of what you just said here. Yeah. And probably you seeing a lot of people for whom their dark and light were different, Yeah.
No, not the foster parents, the social system. I think that's the thing is like you get told things. I was lied to a lot by a lot of people. And so it hits me hard when like you say something, you don't line up with it. Cause for me, if I say I'm going to do it, I'm going to do it. And I get sick if I have to miss something or I'm off of my word. And so it's just, even if I say I'm going to do it, I'm going to be there. Like 100%, you can rely upon me to be there.
You have right. Your word is your bond is probably in there. I'm guessing you saw a lot of foster parents who said one thing and acted in totally horrible ways or otherwise.
All the time. I had like 5 different families that were horrible. These social workers, my biological mom, just all this kind of thing. So over the years.
You probably don't like Halloween.
I don't mind Halloween, but I don't celebrate like crazy. I don't go like, but.
Well, I just mean because it's a thing where people are pretending to be someone else. Yeah. So I'm just wondering like what, maybe if that doesn't connect with you, like,
No, I guess don't worry about that too much. I guess I know that that's one thing, but when your transparent self goes, I'm going to be there and do this, and then you don't even have the intention of doing it, and I know that.
Yeah,
that's probably the thing that gets my stomach turns right now at the thought of people doing that. I cut people off quickly. Like if somebody does that, immediately they're removed from my life and I don't let them back in. Like at this point in my life, I'm grown.
Well, you're probably one of those trust people, because if I asked you the question and I said, hey, if someone violates your trust, so does it matter what they did or are they dead to you?
Oh, they did to me.
Yeah. The people who are trust wise and the people who are trust core value, they always answer that question that way. And the other people go, well, it depends on what they did. And so that you probably have had a lifelong group of friends that's hard to break into.
32 years.
Yeah. And I always say for trust people, if your wife cheats on you, there's absolutely no coming back.
Oh, that's the funny thing. So if you go deep into that was actually my wife. She had an affair. Is how our whole thing fell apart. That was I'm talking the hardest thing in my life to be where we're at now. But because of that, we've both massively changed as humans. Yeah. But there's never trust issues now. Like that's the farthest thing from my mind. But we were divorced for 3 years and I went through the ringer of life. And so, but you're right. That's still something that probably at least twice a year, my heart starts beating fast at the thought of it. I have to actually calm myself and talk myself through it. Like it's an interesting journey.
But that's what I was saying before. Like, so you in business, if relationships of trust are a core value, you got to say to people like, look, when you come work for me, like, I'm super trusting and whatever. But if you take advantage of that, or if that gets broken, there's just no coming back.
Oh yeah, I say that. I do at the beginning. I say, I will always support you. Be dialed in. You'll always know what I'm thinking. I'm never going to be like hiding a secret from you. But I tell them like, if something goes wrong, we'll give you the chance to navigate it if it's like an actual mistake. But if you lie about something or you do something that's dishonest, like I don't have the ability to have you come back to our team. You can't be canceled.
So you are doing what I would advocate to do, which is understand yourself and then just tell everyone what your playbook is. And we've circled a few of these around here. So I think if you have very strong values, and I think they probably a lot of them tie to that experience, and because I've heard most of them around community, do what you're going to say, be trusting. Like those are all probably violations. Yeah.
That's crazy, dude. I love this. This has been a great conversation. I've enjoyed chatting with you and getting to know your head and your heart. Where can I send people to get this book?
Yeah. So book's out October 14th through launch week. We're also giving the course away that comes with it that helps you do it. So it's compass-within.com, or you can go to Amazon. But if you go to Compass Within, that's where you can register and get the course and just tell us where you bought it.
Perfect. And then last question. This is going to be an interesting one. If you're not a person of faith, just listen to it in a separate way. Yeah. What promise did God or the Creator make to the world when they created you?
I guess he'll help you be better. Back to where we started.
All right. I can dig that. That's good. That's a good one. It's a service one. Yeah. I get a bunch of them. I was asked, somebody asked me.
That's a good question. I've had a lot of doozies at the end. That's a good one.
I've never had anybody ask me separately like another crazy question like that. But the dude, I just met him. His name was J.R. Reed. I'm like, bro, what did you just ask me? I was at a Starbucks. I'm like, that's a crazy deep question for me to just meet you. So it's always sat with me. So I go, it's a good one to play. And I find it changes with people over years and time. But yeah, it's always the one that makes you go, yeah, why was I here? Like, what am I supposed to do? And well, that's a good one though. I like that. It's a good answer.
I like that one a lot.
Beautiful. Well, I appreciate you for being here. As you guys who were tuned in as well, thank you for hanging out with me and Robert. I know you could have been anywhere in the world doing anything with your time, but you chose to come listen to this podcast. Make sure you go to compass-within.com, or go to Barnes & Noble, I think it was, or to go to Amazon online.
You'll find it, yeah.
Grab this book. If you get a chance to unpack a little bit about who you are, understand how you function, that could be honestly the skeleton key to every part of your life to get better. Sometimes it's just knowing how we function helps us function better for the world around us. So thank you, Robert. Thank you guys for tuning in, and we'll talk to you next time. That's a wrap for today's episode of the Speak to Freedom podcast. I hope you found our discussion inspiring and informative. Now, if you enjoyed today's episode and want to stay updated on all our future releases, be sure to hit the subscribe button on your favorite podcast platform. Thank you for tuning in today. Until next time, remember to speak with confidence and clarity so you can one day soon speak to freedom. See you in the next episode.